Are you looking for more out of your life? Do you need ideas on how to start new businesses and how to move forward in your own personal life? Well, guess what? You have come to the right radio show. At You Can Overcome Anything podcast show, you will learn and hear from many people from all walks of life who are sharing their challenges, their stories, the habits, and the mind shifts they had to overcome to become who they are today. On top, you will get a chance to connect and see how you can overcome anything by networking and learning about your next move through this radio show. I present to you our great speakers at You Can Overcome Anything podcast show with your host, Cesar Espino. Hello there, and welcome back to another episode of You Can Overcome Anything podcast show. It is your host, Cesar Espino, and today I have a special guest. He's the founder of Zen-u-it Consulting Services and the CTO of Enrollment ML. Besides running an international company, he is responsible for developing and implementing several critical software applications across multiple industries verticals, such as finance, insurance, higher education, sales, and information technology. Daniel has pioneered several machine learning inventions in the finances and cybersecurity industries. He constantly seeks ways to apply knowledge to improve the environment around him and enjoys teaching, mentoring, and challenging those he has been privileged to meet to leave the world a better place than the way he found it. It's my pleasure to introduce you to Daniel Curtis. Hey, Daniel, how are you, man?
Hi, Cesar. Thank you very much for having me, sir.
Yeah, definitely. It's a pleasure having you here today. And so definitely, I always like I enjoy knowing what people are doing now. I always like to go back and learn more about their upbringing and originally where they came from and kind of like that background. So why don't you tell me a little bit about that about yourself?
Sure. I'm more than happy to. So, upbringing was interesting. I grew up in the southern United States mostly. So I started in Atlanta, and then we went to Houston, and then a few places in between, but not for long stints of time. And then North Alabama after that. So the greater, Huntsville, Florence area up there, not about an hour and a half from Nashville. And so that's obviously interesting because I've traveled the world since then, but I still have a great appreciation for the many different views and experiences that I had growing up there. So I would say it certainly helped shape me in a way. But I think one of the funniest comments even my wife makes, she said, well, you grew up in the South and you don't have a Southern accent. So you must be defective. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, right.
So, yeah, I mean, but in outside of that, I had spent a fair amount of time traveling throughout the United States for work. I worked as a consultant for a long time, and I used to joke I would just go wherever it was most lucrative, right? I mean, that's kind of what most of us would like to do, right? So,
right, yeah.
You just kind of find your way. So I ended up everywhere between, Kentucky to Alaska and New York City, Seoul, Korea, and a few other places in Southeast Asia. So it's been a journey, and I'm grateful for every day that I get to participate in it. That's really the way that I look at it.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, and I think that's I know for growing up a lot of times, one of the things that I wanted to do was like, kind of that idea of living out of a suitcase, right? Just because you're traveling so much for work, and it's definitely a good way to experience life and definitely get to know new places, new people, different things. Definitely is not for everyone. At the end of the day, I think there's a unique aspect of that because through that you also learn a lot about life, right? And you learn a lot about yourself too. And so, growing up, I mean, you had an idea of what you wanted to do, or that you were going to be doing some of those things, or
yeah, that's a great question. So when I started, I started in the technology industry when I was 8.
Okay.
This is it's the early 90s, and my mother was a COBOL programmer, And
Mm,
so some people listening, maybe they know what that is. It's an old programming language. It's still used on very old systems that, haven't, they call them antiquated or legacy at this point, but
mhm.
they were very popular in the 80s and 90s. But it's like many things in life. We've come to a point where we found a better way to do it, but we learned from that, kind of what you were alluding to there, just through travels and experience, right? So it's the same in the technology industry.
Right.
But so she's a COBOL programmer, and I was having this problem. We got a family computer. My dad spent like who knows how much money, probably $3,000 or $4,000 at the time, and we weren't ultra poor, but we weren't well off by any means, right? So that was significant. And he did that because he wanted to give us a chance. I think, like, for my mother to improve her career, and also for the kids to be able to have access to it. And I'd say that was a good move, because about 2 months later, I had carried the thing into my bedroom at
Mhm.
like 7 in the morning on a Saturday, right? Because everybody wants to be up at that early. And
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so I take the whole thing apart, and I'm just trying to figure it out, and that's really where the journey began. And my dad finds me in the room, and I'm trying to put it back together. Of course, it's me. Anybody knows me, I always have a few screws left over when I'm done. So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
he's like, yeah, we should probably figure out where. I thought he was going to be mad at me. He wasn't mad at all. I think he
Mm,
was very, very much intrigued that I was so interested in it. And yeah, it just went from there. So
yeah. You know what's interesting? I find that very interesting that sometimes, oftentimes, we as kids tend to kind of fall into the industry that either one of our parents are doing, right? And I think this is the
right.
first time that I talk to somebody that says, yeah, well, my mom or my dad, they're in the programming kind of space, and I kind of fell into that at an early age. I have seen it for other industries, never for really the IT aspect. I do find that very fascinating, though, that a lot of times we tend to fall into what our parents are doing for the most part.
Yeah,
um,
yeah. I,
it's kind of cool. Yeah.
I wonder so the motivation for me, honestly, was that I wanted this video game to work, and it was one of
Ah,
these old text-based video games, and it wasn't working, and no one would help me. So I was like, I just have to figure this out, like, I've got to figure it out. And I
yeah,
figured it out. And I
yeah,
look back now and I wonder how I actually figured it out, because that stuff is far more complex than any system that we would work on like that today.
yeah.
So I'm like, I mean,
Wow.
I'm baffled, honestly.
Yeah, yeah. Definitely. No, and IT and programming, and especially more so maybe back in the days. I don't know about now, but back in the
Mm-hmm.
days, it wasn't something uh simple. I think there was there's some complexity with all of that, right?
Yeah, it was not forgiving whatsoever.
Right.
Right. It's now you have a problem. It kind of give you an error message generally, or there's
Yeah.
enough information available on the internet, which was just starting to come about at the time. So yeah, I mean, we have come a long way, and
Yeah.
I think it's generally for the better. So
Yeah. Now, growing up, were there any major challenges that you might have faced? Number one, and then were there any lessons that were extracted from that, or things you've learned through growing up into your early 20s?
yeah, so I would say it was very it's a very interesting time for me, because I wanted to be done with school so I could go contribute and work. Like, my
Mhm.
head was already there. And so I struggled a little bit with the school system, honestly. And I've reflected on that a lot, because I thought, okay, how can I change that? How can I make sure that my kids don't struggle in the school system? And I don't mean in the sense that I'm like failing out or anything like that, but I mean, it was like it was just difficult for me, because I wanted to be done with it, and I spent
Mhm.
a lot of time reading and studying, and like, I'd passed the test, the exam that we needed to pass to graduate high school when I was 14. So I'm like, what can I leave now? And they're like, no. And I'm like, well, what? Like, why do you want me to take the test then? Like, what's going
Right.
on here, right? So
Yeah.
so a little bit of that's humility, right? So you need to learn a little bit of humility, and it's not, and I want to be clear, like, I don't think I'm smarter than anybody else next to me. I really don't, and anybody who knows me knows
Hmm.
that. But I wonder, it's something that I've really reflected on. How do if I can't put myself in the best place to be successful, how can I encourage anybody else to be in the best place to be successful? So I had to really reflect on that. What worked well? What didn't work well? How can I make it better? How can I make sure that like maybe my children are put in a different scenario if I can control that, or any other child for that matter, right? So
Mhm.
how do you bring the best out of people? So I think those are questions that I started to start asking throughout that time. And and it's not the biggest struggle in the world, but it's kind of funny, isn't it, Cesar? I think the biggest struggles are often in our own heads,
Yeah,
right?
right.
So
Yeah. Yeah,
that's really where I started to learn that.
yeah, no, I definitely agree, and that actually is a good way to uh, something great to point out. Eh, what is your belief? Because obviously, in terms of the school system, right?
Yes.
How we're being educated, and the only reason why I'm asking that is because obviously, I think now more so now, or at least I didn't see it before. Maybe I see it now based on being a full time entrepreneur and like yourself having your own business. There's that traditional school and there's the non-traditional school per se, right? And so obviously if you're going to get an education, there's certain things that or certain careers that you have to go to school. I mean, you have to, if you want to become a doctor, you got to go and get your credentials or things like that, right? Except nevertheless, what is your opinion in terms of the traditional school where we all go to school after college and graduate and get a degree and go on with our lives?
So I think it's a fabulous question, and I've obviously reflected on this to a tremendous amount. So I think you make an excellent point out of the gate. Like, we don't want a doctor, we don't want chiropractor, we don't want pilot for that sake, doing their craft without meeting some standard criteria,
Right,
right? Because we can hurt people,
right,
and we would generally, in an ideal scenario, not hurt people unintentionally or due to lack of knowledge or something like this. So there are, and we've come a long way in that regard, right? So there are many professions where structured education and the knowledge of that profession and how to apply it in a very constructive and meaningful way is of the paramount importance, right? I don't want to take away from that, but what percentage of the world falls into a profession where that's the case? You know what I
right.
mean? It's not a significant percentage as part of the whole picture. So what happens? I think we need to do a better job. I say, when I look at the school system, if you look at just the public education system, if we go downtown Los Angeles, public
Mhm.
education system, I haven't been to Los Angeles in many years. I'm not gonna be hypercritical here, but
Right,
I'm gonna imagine that it can be better.
right.
Okay. And it's difficult to make something better if we don't set a standard or try to move towards something, right? And that's change. We have to manage change. We have to manage everything else in between. We have kids, and part of the problem there too is, once kids get to a certain age, they know that they think they know the an age, they think they know the world,
Hmm.
right? Just like some of us may have at that same age, right? And so it's a problem that I think you need to start solving at a younger age. I think that the school systems need to be more open to the goal of pulling out the potential from each individual student is such that they can be the best version of themselves. That's the goal that we really need to get to. So that's the vision that I have for it. And it's going to take, it would take a tremendous amount of work and effort from a lot of people to make that happen. But when I think about society as a whole, and I frequently do, to me, that's step one in us building something great that we would all look back at and say, hey, we did something really well. And I see the fruits of our labor, right? Because we see that every day. What differentiates you and me and everybody else in the world from everybody else? It's not necessarily that I know more than you or you know more than me. It's that we are trying to draw that potential out of ourselves. I think that's why people love children. Generally, like, we see children, what do we see? You see untapped potential, you see undeveloped
Right,
potential. They
right.
have unlimited possibilities in front of them. What do you want for them? You know? So I think that's really, without talking your off about that topic for 3 or 4 hours, that's
Yeah.
really where I think we need to be going.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you on that. And the other thing too that you mentioned, which I think is so important for us to recognize and realize, is that again, going back to that mindset and the ability to exercise that muscle and start working through that. And I do believe that the things that are going on in between your 2 years can either make you or break you. and really create and open up opportunities, or unfortunately you don't see them, or you're not in the same in the right mind as aspect to where you let some opportunities go. Have you ever come across, through leading up to your career and doing the things that you're doing right now, where you might have left some untapped opportunities just because you didn't think you had the mindset for it?
You know, I really tried to conquer this at a young age, and I'll tell you a quick story because I think it's very important. I think that the world as we see it, so our perception of the world and how we
Mm-hmm.
fit into the world is part of this whole big picture. But again, it's that barrier that we can put in our own heads. I used to have a lot of problems in school. I was the smallest kid in my class. I was the youngest kid in my class. I usually did very well in class. I'm talking fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth grade, right? So I didn't fit in the best. Okay. And and that's a great learning experience for me generally. My wife would say maybe I need to learn more, but anyway, she's probably right. I get there, and I used to wake up every day, Cesar, and I used to say, okay, I had a bad day because I didn't do this, or because this happened, or because of this, or whatever it was, right? And I that went on for years, and then finally I just woke up one day and I said, if I'm going to have a good day, it's because I want to have a good day. It's
Mm,
legitimately how I view the world. It's the perception that I have, and who controls that?
you do.
Me, exactly. So then I said, I don't have barriers anymore. I will go and I will do what I want to do the best way that I can do it, and I don't care what anybody else thinks of me. Now, that's a very pointed statement, and I don't, I want to be clear. I do care. There are people that if they bring me criticism, I will say, yeah, trust me, okay, I stepped too far, or maybe I need to consider this, or whatever it is. But generally speaking, I started to see the world through my own eyes instead of how everybody else thought I should be. You know
Mm.
what I mean? So that's I'm fortunate. I think I was 12 when that happened, so kind of like set all the anxiety and fear to the side and said, you know what, that was fun, but I'm gonna move. I'm gonna go this direction now. So
Yeah,
that
yeah,
it served me well thus far. And but I'm not blind to the world. I want to make that clear.
right. No, and you know what? To expand on that, I really like the idea of at the end of the day, the decisions and choices that we make today are going to impact the quality of life that we have tomorrow. And it all comes down to what decisions am I making today? What am I choosing to do? And like you said, you have the choice to make something. I mean, um, even being here in the United States, I mean, definitely. I mean, I think we do have a lot of that freedom to where we can, as long as you're not hurting anybody, we have the choice to do whatever we want, right? And we have the choice to make that impact and impact our lives in many different ways. And I like the idea of, once you can recognize that and see that uh, really the power or the ability to make a positive impact and change in your life comes from your within yourself, and you can recognize that. And even if you don't have all of the available data or all the information available for you to make that change, you have the ability to start making a very small shift to help you get to where you want to get to, right? And then you start looking into that stuff.
One step at a time.
Right.
If you sit around looking your whole life at what you want to do, you never do it. You're going to be in the same position. Everybody else is going to be a lot further away because they were probably walking in some direction, right? And
Right.
obviously, I'm speaking very abstract and
Mm-hmm.
hypothetical, but it's true. If someone driving in a car at 5 miles an hour and you're standing still, you can easily walk at 5 miles an hour. You might walk a little bit fast, but you can keep up. Where's that car going? Maybe you should just get in the car, right?
Right.
Like, let's go. Like, let's move on with our life. Let's not watch it pass us by. So, and you talked about seizing opportunity. There's a lot of opportunity in place in the United States and in the world in general. And we have to, as individuals, no one's going to give you anything. And if they do, it's not worth it.
Right.
I can almost guarantee you that. Right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. No, definitely. And I think we have, that's the part of your message is, is if you set your mind to something, the only thing that will stop you, it's yourself. And it really comes down to that. I mean, you're the only one that can stop you from really achieving and or creating something great. And so definitely think is huge. Let's talk about building your business, right? And really, I want to hone in into the things you're doing right now with your consulting firm and what you do specifically. How was that? Well, I guess one of the first thing is, a lot of times, a lot of the listeners are probably either getting into the idea of becoming an entrepreneur or a business owner or whatever, going in their own venture, and some of them might be in the fence line, right? I guess my first thing is, what led you to say, you know what, I don't want to work for anybody else. I want to do this on my own, start my own company, and kind of go through there.
I'm I'm kind of a free will in that sense, right? So I think there's some of us out there in the world who just kind of chart our own path, so to
Mm-hmm.
speak, and I believe you're part of that crew. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that when I guess, and it's funny because I'll talk to many people, right? I just see the world a little bit differently. So I'm all about trying, like we talked about the education system before. I
Yeah.
look at something, I see opportunity, and I think, how can I maximize the opportunity in that space to solve a problem, or to solve a problem and also bring a lot of people jobs and income that they might never have, right? So
Mm-hmm.
these are the way that I kind of view the world. And when I look at an entrepreneurial mindset, and I think that's fundamentally what it is. You're trying to solve a
Mm-hmm.
problem, and I think it's great because it puts the power, our system as a whole here in North America and the United States specifically, puts the power to the individual level to make the change that they need to make. And then the market can respond, right? It can say,
Mm-hmm.
hey, yeah, we like that. That's a good idea. Or maybe kind of, but you have to be able to shift. And I think that's the number one thing that I would say to any person who's thinking about becoming an entrepreneur. They're on the fence. You're going to have a lot of ideas, and typically, and this is even true in my case, it seems like the least likely of the ideas, or the one you thought about last, is the one that's going to work the best, right? And
Right.
so part of that's perception. You constantly analyze. Don't just say I'm going to do this and then beat it into the ground until everything around you is dead and you're standing in the middle of the desert, right? Sometimes you got to make a turn and find a better way. So that's definitely something that I've learned throughout my career. But I started at a young age. I was mowing lawns at 13.
Mm-hmm.
Walked around the neighborhood soliciting people to mow their yard and weed eat their yard for $20 there. And when I lived in Houston, and I had a little business there. It definitely paid for all my summer activities, and
Yeah.
that was great. So I'd say I started from a young age, man.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Yeah. And, kind of going back to that, the thing you mentioned, um, where you have an idea and you don't just beat it to the ground. You gotta, adjust to that. And I always call it, you gotta review, rehearse, and revise. And always looking at those three different things, right? I'm reviewing a process. I'm going to rehearse it to master my craft, and I'm going to revise it. Whatever didn't work, let me make it better, right? In terms
Exactly.
of that. So you kind of working through getting your business up and running. You had gone through some injuries. Tell me more
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah. So the great irony of life here. So everything is going quite swimmingly, and then you hit your head on the ice, and then
Yeah.
so stuff stops going so swimmingly, right? So I used to play goalie in ice hockey.
Okay.
Um, and so I had an incident where someone hit me, and as a goalie, you're kind of stationary, so it didn't work out well for me.
Yeah.
I did hit my head on the ice. Did obviously concussion. It was weird. I actually got a spinal cord injury as part of that too, and
Wow.
I'm fortunate that it wasn't incredibly severe. Though I will say I did lose feeling in my entire body for the better part of 2.5 weeks, and that's a very interesting experience. When you go to the doctor, as I go to the hospital, and they're like, "Hey," I'm like, "Hey, I can't feel anything," and the
Hmm.
ER doctor is just looking at me like I'm insane because I walked in there, right?
Hmm.
And I'm like, "Look, man, you do whatever you want to do. I'll put on a blindfold. You can stab me wherever you want. I'm guarantee you're not going to get a response."
Yeah.
So
Wow.
he told me, he's like, "I put ice cubes all over your body." He was like poking me with sticks and everything. He's like, obviously, so they did all the tests, comes back, they're like, "You don't have a broken neck." I'm like, "That's good, man. Like, I like that checkbox."
Yeah. 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 Exactly.
But he's like, "The bad news is I have no idea what the hell is wrong with you."
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
So and it took a lot of work to figure that out. It was fortunate. There's there's a chiropractor in town who I went to in the past, and he had a radiologist that works with him review everything, and he could basically see that one of my vertebrae had shifted forward and hit the spinal cord where it's not supposed to be, and it was putting a lot of pressure on that, which was causing me to lose sensation in my entire body. So I wasn't that far off from not even talking to you today, actually.
Wow. Yeah.
So that was a process. So that took about 8 months to get back to being, I would say, to the 90th percentile. And so what also happened in that time was I signed one of the biggest deals, of course, like the week before this happened, for our company to support and develop the SaaS application. And it's a fantastic project, and I've enjoyed it. But something that went from being very easy for me to deliver became nearly impossible.
Wow.
And I mean, I'm telling you, like, I would walk around. I was like, I got to do this and this and this. And, and some people listening, maybe you're a programmer, maybe you're at least experienced with that. It's not the lightest mental work. It takes a degree of focus to solve something typically. So I would have to get to the point. I realized pretty quickly, Cesar, that I had to put a sticky note on my monitor to remind me what to do. Because by the time I'd be sitting down writing or thinking, and by the time I looked up, I would forget what I was doing. Right. So this is bad, right? Because I used to be able to, if I look at a credit card once, I'll remember all the numbers. Like, it's ingrained in my head forever. Right. Yeah. But I went from that to, looking at forgetting what I was about to type or what I was even going to do. And that lasted for like 2 months. So I had to improvise. I had to use my interpersonal skills to build a team.
Yeah.
So in some ways, I look back and I say, you know what, that was kind of good for me, because it pulled me out of the weeds, and it had me go and find people and build an organization and really empower these people to do a great job. And they have done that and above and beyond that. So, I kind of joke when people talk to me about this. It's like, they're like, how did you survive? I'm like, I survived, I'm still here. I'm talking to you. I'm not even worried about that. Like, my head still hurts every day, but you know what? I can live with that. I don't even pay attention to it anymore. But it's like, I think at the same time, from a business perspective, it's one of the better things that could have happened to me. So, and I believe that, because it made me step back and view the whole picture instead of being hyper ingrained in a particular flow or process. Right. And then as someone who wants to build a business beyond just, 10 or 15 people where we were at the time, I had to do that. There was no way that it's not going to create itself. Right. You know that. Yep. So
yep.
I think that was one of the biggest things that I learned, man.
Yeah. Talk about overcoming adversity. And just being able to overcome all those difficulties and challenges. And as you mentioned, now that I hear this and listen to your point of view, it's true, right? A lot of times we're so hung up on the idea of we got to be able to do everything, or we're so afraid to let it go. We're so afraid to kind of trust on other people to kind of help us build our own business, where in this case you kind of didn't have the option to an extent, and you had to. Yet, as you mentioned, that was probably one of the best things that could have happened to you as a result of that. Beyond that, in allowing you to expand, what were other things that might have been going through your head, other lessons, other things that you extracted, that you've learned from that experience, that you feel like, okay, I mean, I get it. That was not the ideal thing. Nevertheless, that has allowed me to, do something different, right? Or think differently.
Yeah, it has. And I started thinking about the individual lives of every family, for example, who I was ultimately responsible for, either directly or indirectly. Right. And I thought, okay, how are my actions aligned with that outcome, as such that what if I'm dead right now? Like, well, how would that be? You know what I mean? I'm not saying that these people would never find a job, but I'm saying they trust me. Right. To help build something. They trust me that we're going to build something great, and that we all going to participate in that. And so I think it's part, it takes everybody to build something. But my team, I always tell them, we're not here without each other, and but they always tell me, like, no, we're not here without you, because it's like the vision. And I say, look, you know what, that's fine. We all have things we're good at. I'll be the visionary and I'll quit playing goalie. How about that? So
yeah, right.
But I think I take a little bit more humility probably out of this. It's like, you know what, we're all human. and I'm not infallible, and nobody is, at least to my knowledge. So how do we put ourselves in positions to be successful? And we've had a lot of great opportunities that have come over the past 8 months since that's happened. And, putting these structures in place, finding the right people. And it's funny, I could talk to anybody, Cesar, I could talk to anybody. They would never know I was hurt. I get on the phone, talking, no problem. Right. So then I would say, I can't help you right now because I got hit upside the head and I can't think. They're like, it doesn't seem like it. Right. Exactly. I'm like, guys, this is easy stuff, but like having the conversation about it, no problem. This confidence is what that is. Right. So if we've also been able to start up operations in a few other geographies as part of this that helped us scale a lot too. So I would say just, it really helped me to take a step back, analyze my position, analyze everything that we're doing for our companies, and making sure that we have the right support structures in place so that we can hit the goals and objectives that we had. Obviously we had to retool some stuff, and I think that's part of your revise stuff there at the end. It's hey, we learned, we tried it. Well, if I can't think straight, this isn't going to work. So we're gonna need some more help. How do we get more help? Start talking to people, friends of friends, and then we still manage to thrive in a sense where we're bringing in a lot of deals, a lot of new customers, even some even started a new company, a new subsidiary under that umbrella recently. So it's been good. Yeah. I don't advise this experience for anybody, but I guess one of the other things that I learned is life is what you make it. Right. So we go back to that perception. I could have sit there on the bed and said, I'm just going to be dead. I told my wife, I'm like, hey, I don't want you to have this liability the rest of your life. I'm like paralyzed or something, she's like, just there was like one moment in my head where I was like really like down about that, for like 5 minutes. And she said, you're not being yourself, right? Shut up and deal with it, because that's what I would tell anybody else who was saying that. And I said, fair enough. Right. You're right. And I get up and go, so there's a lot there, obviously, Cesar, but I mean,
right. Yeah. I mean, you gotta deal with what emerges, and then, exactly. Just don't, I like that, life is what you make it. Right. And oftentimes, we will have different challenges, different things happening to us. And it's not what's happening to us, is what we do about it. Right. From that perspective.
Correct. And people listen, they might think I'm absolutely insane, and maybe I am, but I'm not sad that happens to me.
Right. Yeah.
Because from my perspective, I think I made the best of that situation that I possibly could. And I also learned a few things, and it pushed me in a direction that I probably should have been going in a few years before. Yeah. Right. Yeah. It forced the change that was necessary for me to continue to succeed.
Yeah. And again, I definitely believe there's so much to be learned from that, and so many lessons, because again, sometimes we need, I always tell people that from pain, a purpose was born. Something what came out of that, right? And when we see it from that perspective, it's like, all right, yeah, I mean, it might have been not the ideal situation. Then again, what is the purpose that I have now? Where am I heading? Where am I now? And it might be even way better than where you were before. Sometimes we don't recognize that. Yeah.
You get caught up in the old way of thinking. Right. I don't think any great thing happened in the history of mankind because everybody was complacent with their current position. Right. Yes. Where's the motivation at?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. I mean, honestly, think about that.
Yeah. No, that's huge. So tell me about your business, your consulting business, or your company. So are you dealing with major organizations, individuals? What is your avatar type of customer?
Yeah, so we do mostly B2B. We support a lot in the insurance industry and the finance industry specifically, and we provide IT, information technology consulting services, and cybersecurity within that realm. And we also do secure application development. So it's kind of like an umbrella where we do a lot. A lot of customers are in the cloud. They're moving stuff to the cloud, migrations. One of the bigger things that we do, we do a lot of successful migrations in a lot of different industries, manufacturing included. But the other thing that people need to watch out for is that the majority of cloud security breaches are because of misconfiguration during the initial phase. So that's because I say I'm going to do it myself and I don't really have all the expertise, or maybe some other company is doing it, and there are plenty of great companies out there. I'm not trying to like
Right.
disparage anybody, but I'm saying, how are they doing it that aligns with other industry frameworks and best practices that you can help prevent problems? That's really what we're in the industry of, Cesar, is preventing problems. So
Got it.
there's some people that want to pay for that, and a lot of people who've been down the road once or twice know that it's worth paying for. So
Yeah.
those are typically the customers that we work with in that space. And outside of that, we do a lot of software as a service application development. So we work with a few companies in the SaaS industry, both in higher education and finance, and doing a lot of applied machine learning and artificial intelligence work in those spaces.
Yeah. Where can people connect with you or learn more about your company?
Yeah, I'd say the best place. I'm not huge on social media, so the best place is LinkedIn. So it's Daniel-R-Curtis on LinkedIn profile.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you were talking about you've expanded to other geographical areas. Where are you now? Are you just where are you operating off of?
So we have service delivery capabilities in India and in multiple locations in India. So we have a subsidiary in India, Western Ukraine in Lviv, actually, and it's a funny story, and soon to be Uruguay in South America. So
right, nice.
Yeah, I'm excited about that.
Yeah. No, and that's definitely. I mean, taking it from maybe more of a US based type of company to be able to expand to multiple areas. I'm sure that's a huge accomplishment, and there's a lot to be spoken to that.
It's fun. We get to change the lives of a lot of people around the world, and I love that, because I think a lot of people look at capitalism as something big and evil, and I've gone both ways on it. I'll be 100% honest, but the more I've reflected on it, the more I participated in that system and tried to understand it. I mean, capitalism has pulled more people out of poverty at a higher rate around the world than any other system in the history of mankind. So I think what we need more is we need more opportunity for more people. We need our education systems to align with what's actually happening in the market. Right. And I think we'll be more successful at home as well. So.
Right. Yeah. No. Yeah. Definitely. So what's next for you? What are some of the next things happening for you or your company that you're working on?
Yeah, so I'd say that the biggest things we've been working on is we have a targeted service for the insurance industry. So we're talking underwriters, agencies, carriers, through and through the whole industry, where we're doing a lot of back office outsourcing, actually. So business process outsourcing. We're able to deliver around the clock to help people keep up with their claims, keep their costs down a little bit. So we've been highly successful with that product, and we layer our cybersecurity services on top of that. So we keep all the information data secure, people trained, working hard, right? So I think, again, that's been great for us. And that's fairly new over the past 90 days. And one of the other things that I'm working on, I can't go into a lot of detail, but it's I wrote a few patents a few years ago before I hit my head on the ice that were to do with financial systems and modeling and things like that. So we started a subsidiary here to take that to market now that it's kind of flushed out and have it working. So
that's good. That's good. I have two last questions for you. The first one is, obviously I am a firm believer of the habits, the things that we do on a day-to-day basis, and so on and so forth. I'm just wondering, do you have any habits, rituals, things that you do on a day-to-day basis to kind of keep you in this positive state of mind, or being able to attack your day-to-day activities?
I think that's a great question, Cesar. So I'm probably statistically, I'm in the 20th percentile for organization. Okay. So if you look at the population and you throw them on a chart, I would be over there in the corner with all my toys on the floor all messed up. Right. So if you looked at my desk right now, you would know, but I know where everything is. That's the key. Now, here's the key. I have a highly structured day. Now that's different from organized. What does structured mean? It means when I wake up, I do the same thing every day. When I'm done with work, I set work aside like 4:30, 5 o'clock. I put it down and I go spend time with my family. Recharge. You have to have time to recharge mentally. You can't go. I mean, you can, but by the end of a week or two of that, you're going to be dead, right? So you're kind of lost in the world, and you'll just suffer burnout. That's no good. Been there. So we have to manage that. We want to get into states of mind where we can really focus. Some people call it flow. I just call it, hey, this is where I'm achieving great things, really. So I can set the world aside. So that happens to me twice a day. Typically, it's in the morning and at night. So I try to capitalize on that, right? So I set up my day so that when I wake up in the morning, I go, and then I go have lunch or whatever it is. Don't eat too much. That's what I learned, because then you crash after lunch. So I don't eat too much. So then you go. I usually book sales meetings right after lunch for the 2 hours after lunch, because people are more likely to say yes statistically after they've eaten. So, there's that. And then there's also, at the end of the day, you put it down, walk away, refresh your mind, spend time with your friends and family, whatever you have there, and enjoy that. And then a lot of times, honestly, you've probably done this too, 9, 10 o'clock, everybody's asleep. I'm back at it, man. So I'll go back at it for 2, 3 hours until it's time. So until I get tired, and then I go to sleep. So, but I try to structure my days in a way. I try to put my stuff, my phone, my wallet, my keys, if they're not in the place where I put them, those are the 3 things that I try to put in the same place every time. Because I'll waste time looking for stuff, right? And that's no good, So
yeah. That's awesome. No, and I do believe that once it doesn't matter how big it is or how small it is. I think that you have to have some sort of discipline or a structure on your day, right? To kind of get you moving. One of the biggest things that I think we have that is very limited is time. And so the less time I can spend doing things that, if I can structure that or make it more easier for me to do, the more time I have to do other things that might bring more value to my day.
That's a great point. So you do something that make 10 more minutes in your day because of how you change your structure. I don't remember the exact number, so I'm not going to quote it, but I don't think the average person can actually think about a given topic for more than 30 or 45 seconds anyway. So think about that, and then think about where those 30 or 45 seconds come from that you're able to chain stuff together. That's like 5 uninterrupted minutes can actually create high value if you're trying to achieve something that you haven't done before.
Right.
It can lay, it's the difference when, and I sincerely, so I don't think of new ideas at 2 o'clock in the afternoon when anybody in the world is calling me, because it's a distraction. I do that at night when the world is quiet to me, right? There's no one, and even the only one who's going to come up here and say hi is the cat, so
exactly.
That's it, so
no, that's good. And one of the things that I do, and this is kind of like a non-negotiable, like I like to go out and take a walk. Just go out for a walk, put on some either podcast or just some motivational stuff, or sometimes I don't really listen to anything. I just try to clear my mind, and it's my time to get some exercise, and more so just be able to focus on me and think and focus and come up with ideas and say, okay, this is what I'm gonna do now next, and so that's one of the things that I do on a day-to-day basis.
I think that's a great advice, Cesar. I do take walks frequently, and it's a great time to reflect.
Exactly.
I listen to podcasts sometimes while I'm driving, typically because it's like, going somewhere. It's like, I could learn something. Maybe I'll learn something. This is great. At least listen, get a different perspective. So I love that medium of communication for that. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, definitely.
I do a little meditating every once in a while too, and not too often. It's just like clear the mind,
Yeah, no, that definitely. The other thing too is, you given us a lot of great information, some really good golden nuggets. For the people that are listening to us and are watching us, if they're going through any challenge, whatever challenge that might be, what is one or a couple of things you can say to them so they can start overcoming that challenge?
Well, the first thing I would say is make the challenge real. So write it down. Write down exactly what the challenge is, and write down what your problems with it are. And then when you have that fully identified, I want you to start thinking, what can I do to change my situation to remove this challenge from my life? Or am I even going in the right direction? Right? So, let's take this holistic view and this approach. But I tell you, man, I've seen it in the lives of many children that I've coached and people that I've been fortunate enough to mentor in my life. The first thing that you need to do is you need to actually make it real. Write it down. Then you can start to plan. You can start to actualize it. Right? It's not some mystery thing in your head where it's not some barrier of perception, which we've talked about. Right. So if it's real, make it real. Write it down. I have notepads. for like years, man. I have these legal pads everywhere, and it
Yep.
might be for an idea, it might be for a thought, it might be, and my advice by writing it down, making it real, you start to change, you start to shift your perception.
Right.
Okay. And I think that's what's important, because you could think of the world. I tell people that the kids that I coach in hockey or baseball or whatever, it's you could find a million reasons or more not to do something.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But it only takes one reason to do something. And it's because you want to do it. Right. So start with that foundation. You have to have belief in yourself, right? You have to know what the problem is, and you have to believe in yourself. And if you have those two things identified, then I don't know many people who can overcome these things.
Yeah.
They might need to build some habits to help them get some small wins, get some success. Don't try to move the mountain all at once.
Yeah.
Right. But I've seen that work. I don't know about you.
No, yeah, and I definitely, I like that, because even now that I think about it, is, we might have this challenge or whatever that might be in our heads, and once you put it into paper, as you mentioned, make it real. This thing that we might have in our head that maybe we're making it even bigger than what it is. Yes. Once you put it on paper, you're gonna realize it's not as big as I thought it was, and it's in front of me now. I can actually figure out a way to actually exactly challenge that.
Yes, you start to think about it in a different way, right? I think that's it seems almost silly to me how simple that is, but I think it's worked for me, and I've seen it work for a lot of people. So I think there's something there. I'm not a psychologist, but I really believe there's something there.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that's something that now I'm definitely gonna start looking more further. I didn't see it from that perspective, and it goes back to it, is that perception. And you're right. I mean, you sometimes see some stuff in your mind that is different on paper, and the perception, the way you think about it, the way you go about it, you can actually find better ways to attack it. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and when you get good enough at that, you might be able to get to the point where you're able to step outside, be an observer of your situation, and then maybe be a little bit critical of yourself or whatever the situation is, as such that you. And I'm a person who question everything, right? So I was the annoying kid who would ask, like, how does this work? How does this work? How does this work? Why is Billy doing that, right? So like we all build the model of the world. So that's really what that is. We build the model of the world, and this is one thing I'll leave you with. So the model of the world that you had when you were 20 years old is not the same model that you probably should have when you're 38, 40, 50. Why is that? Well, that model served you well, but it was based on your perception at the time, right? The reality is, as you go through life, there's a lot more information, a lot more people, a lot more learning. You'll start seeing it a different way. Then you should be evolving, and you should be maturing. And then that's what yields that. And you have to leave that behind. So if I'm trying to be 20-year-old Daniel when I'm 38, I'm gonna have a problem. I'm gonna have a problem with my relationship. I'm gonna have problems at work. I'm gonna have all kinds of problems, because that's not actually the state of the world. That's the state of the world for a 20-year-old. So we have to be willing to let go of those things and transform into who we should be, who we can be. Like we talk about maximizing potential. That's all part of the process.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No, man, I definitely love it, Daniel. That's definitely a good way to kind of end this. And I love that idea. Is you got to be able to transform. You got to be able to, I always tell people, like, whatever happened in the past, it's a lesson, it's an experience, and you got to be able to extract those lessons to help you today for tomorrow, right? And so definitely, I definitely enjoyed that. Daniel, it was such a great pleasure having you on the show. Anything else you want to say before I let you go?
Cesar, I honestly, I'm very grateful that you give me the opportunity to come and speak with you and your audience today. So I want to say thank you very much for that. And I look forward to listening to your show more in the future. So thank you everybody who's spent time listening to us today.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again for being here. And for the rest of you guys, do me a favor, go ahead and connect with Daniel at LinkedIn. I'll have that information on the comments. And do me a favor, please share this message, because definitely somebody needs to hear this. And I'll see you guys at the next episode of You Can Overcome Anything podcast show. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Cesar Espino, real estate investor, business coach, and consultant, and author of the book, You Can Overcome Anything, Even When the World Says No. My number is 424-501-6046. In my book, I talk about making the necessary changes to shift your mind for prosperity and certainty. Pick up your copy at Amazon. I also love helping families with their real estate and can purchase your house fast and all cash. Follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. My number is 424-501-6046.
Thank you for having me today. I am so glad you've tuned into this podcast. You can find me at your favorite podcast platform where you can like, subscribe, comment, and share. And to learn more about myself, my services, you can find me at www.cesarrespino.com, or you can also find me at your social media. Thanks for joining me, and I am looking forward to having you at the next episode. And know you truly can overcome anything.